This is Grapplers Talk.
What is up, fans of Grapplers Talk? This is Dave coming at you with another episode. Each and every week we're here to bring you the best jiu-jitsu content, the best grappling content out there. I'm thrilled to have a good friend of mine in the studio with me this week. He is a high-level grappler. He is a black belt under Cassio Warnick. Been a good friend of mine, man. We've known each other through the jiu-jitsu community for quite some time. But I'm thrilled to welcome Tyler Brey to the podcast this week, man. What is up, brother?
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. It's a pleasure to have you. And I wanted to have you on, man. You're a very special competitor, dude. You are always out there, man, in the community. Great coaching I've seen from you. I just wanted to have you on here to tell your story, talk about grappling. We're gonna have some fun today. But let's get started. Tyler is a black belt under Cassio, but he has quite an extensive wrestling background. So let's talk about how you got introduced into wrestling and grappling, and we'll go from there.
So started wrestling in 7th grade, and that was with the encouragement of my stepdad. I was always a very typical boy. I was always watching the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and lifting weights and watching WWF. And it really started with, like, I'm jumping off the tables onto my friends when I'm 7, 8, 9 years old, right? So my stepdad is always watching me, like, tackle my friends. And he's like, hey, like, you're wrestling, you're grappling in the living room. My stepdad used to wrestle a little bit. So he said, why don't you try the wrestling team in middle school?
Yeah.
So went out, tried that. The first, 3 weeks was nothing but sprinting around the track, because they were trying to get some of the people to quit and, get the weak ones out, right? So I almost quit because I'm like, I didn't sign up for track.
Yeah.
But so then eventually we got on the mat. And then after I got my first pin, I'm like, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
Right? And I was just figuring it out from there, wrestling from my knees.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of, messing around grappling experience in the living room with my friends.
Right.
So I was very kinesthetic. I knew my body. I could kind of wing it and figure out how to pin somebody, even though the technique wasn't good, but it was enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, after I got my first pin, I loved it. And then I wrestled for 6 years. I wrestled from 7th grade all the way to my first year of college, and then started jiu-jitsu my junior year of high school.
Wow. Yeah. So with Tyler, he also was born with spina bifida, correct?
Yep.
So he does have a unique style. I've seen you do some crazy things in the competition scene, man. And I remember not that long ago, there was a fight to win match that you did, and you had tapped the guy out with an arm lock from the crucifix position. And I remember afterwards, you used the guy to demonstrate the move backstage. Yeah,
there's a story to that. But
and it was quite special, man. And so talking about adapting your wrestling game, your jiu-jitsu game, to make it work for you. Now, a lot of times with wrestling, there's a lot of shots and things like that. How were you able to adapt that to make it comfortable for you?
I mean, just look at everything conceptually.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not looking at exactly the way that coach is teaching the move today. He's teaching a double leg, a single leg. He's teaching whatever he's teaching. What's the concept of, the leverage of how the guy is getting knocked over?
Right.
Why can't he stop it? Because of these main points that give me the leverage or whatever, right? I'm looking at it conceptually, and then I'm figuring it out, just in my own mind. How do I recreate those same leverage points with my body, with my head, with my arms, with just my upper body?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I look at jiu-jitsu and wrestling is what's the big picture? The big picture is get him in this position, get this kind of leverage. How you do it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. With jiu-jitsu, whether you're getting a regular armbar or a inverted armbar, armbar is an armbar.
Right.
Hyperextend the elbow, you win.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at everything, right? So put this guy on his back, hold him there, pin him. How you got him to his back, it does not matter.
Yeah.
Right? So I've always looked at everything conceptually and then figured it out based on the overarching points of the move.
How do you think wrestling at a young age helped you develop a mental toughness? I always say that wrestlers are the toughest athletes out there. You could throw a wrestler against a football player or any other sport out there, And I feel like those wrestlers just have a different grind and a different level of commitment.
100%. And it's hard to explain that to somebody who never wrestled. But let's see. I mean, one of the things I could say on that is I believe it was Matt Lindland, who was a famous UFC fighter, right? And Olympian.
Silver medalist, right?
Yeah, Olympian in wrestling, right? And I think he said something to the effect of, like, wrestling is so much harder than MMA. Mm-hmm. In MMA, there's so many places where you can stop and rest.
Right.
In wrestling, if you stop at any point, you're getting scored on.
Oh, yeah.
There is no resting in wrestling, you know? But in jiu-jitsu and in MMA, there is different points where you can, like, get control, stop, chill, breathe, and then continue, right? In wrestling, that doesn't really exist. If you stop, you're getting put on your back.
Right.
You know? So wrestling does just create animals. It creates mental toughness in a way that nothing I've ever experienced has before.
Right.
And that's not saying somebody who's done jiu-jitsu their whole life and becomes a black belt. I'm not saying they're not mentally tough, but there's just something about wrestling that requires you to be an animal.
Right. Something different, right?
Something where, like, unless you have a bone popping out, why'd you stop?
Yeah.
Like,
and even then, tape it up, right?
Tape it up, kick his ass, then go to the hospital.
Yeah.
You know, like that. Wrestlers are taught that. Wrestlers are psychotic.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you know, like, Elliot Kelly. So he was one of my old wrestling coaches.
Okay.
So we were in the wrestling room before either of us were in the jiu-jitsu room. So later, when we both were doing jiu-jitsu, we've talked about this. And, like, wrestling is just different. It creates a different mentality. And I don't know, jiu-jitsu is amazing, and I love jiu-jitsu, but it doesn't require as much, like, animalistic mental toughness
You're
as
very
wrestling does.
Yeah. Do you feel like with wrestling, like, you know, there's some sort of factor involved with, like, that not quitting, right? You know, you go into a wrestling room and you always see, like, quotes on the wall, you know, of famous wrestlers and, like, don't ever stop, and, you know, those kind of mantras. And you know, do you feel like that kind of breeds into your mind or helps develop something?
I don't know. Just the culture is different.
Right.
It's really hard to put into words. Just from day one, you're taught those kinds of things. You're taught, like, you accept pain. You're going to get hurt and fight through it.
That's
and
just part of it,
if
right?
it means, okay, don't get pinned. And yeah, you're going to have to fight through some pain to get off your back to not get pinned. But whatever, you'll deal with some bruising.
Yeah.
You know, you'll deal with whatever. You lose a tooth, whatever, get off your back.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so you wrestled for quite some time. Obviously, that helped build a solid base and a solid foundation of grappling. Were there any other sports you tried attempting at that time?
I was all in with wrestling. I loved it.
with wrestling.
I was all in with wrestling because I loved figuring out the puzzle, you know, and what's all the different ways I can trick them, thinking conceptually to catch them with a cradle, catch them with a whatever, and flip them onto their back. And especially with my unique situation, right? How can I bait you to put your arm in the wrong spot or something, and now I'm flipping you onto your back? And then I take that same mentality into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
How do we get you? How do we incentivize you to put your arm in the wrong spot? And then there's my Kimura.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So one of my best friends, and you met him a few years ago when I visited your academy. His name's Greg. He was born with one hand. And he also wrestled, and you know, that same toughness, that mental toughness, right? But one thing that he's always told me is, you know, he would go out there, and one of his coaches said, you know, put the nub side out to shake hands right off the bat in the match and see what happens. And it would throw so many people off, or people wouldn't know how to react with him. They'd either be scared to touch it, or, you know, they would be hesitant to do anything. And did you notice anything similar, like wrestling people in especially 7th, 8th grade, and then through high school, like, you know, kind of a like, whoa, man, this.
What do I do?
Yeah, what do I do type situation.
So funny jiu-jitsu story that stuck with me over the years. I think I was probably a high blue belt, or maybe I was a purple belt at the time. I was at one of the Claudio Franca tournaments. I was in the finals against this guy, and first time I ever gone against this guy. And so I'm out there on my knees. He's standing. The ref says go, right? We're going at it. The referee was Cashinho. And so we're going at it, and he gets around behind me real quick. I just stay in turtle because I'm very accepting of that position.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you get the hooks in and get points.
Right.
But I'm playing turtle similar to how Eduardo Teles plays turtle.
Okay.
So I'm not letting you score. But so he gets around behind me. I'm in turtle. I'm on my knees. He grabs my belt. He grabs the top of my gi. He pulls me back like he's trying to pull me into bottom north-south.
Okay.
I scoop my butt back and just go to a wrestler's sit-out. So I'm not letting him put my back on the mat and accepting north-south.
Right.
I'm staying sitting upright in a wrestler's sit-out. So I'm like, okay, I'm okay. So I try to turn to face him. He uses this grip he has on my belt and my gi to not let me turn to the left. So I try to turn to the right. He uses those grips to not let me turn to the right. And then I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I can kind of see in my peripheral, he's totally standing up, bent over with his arms locked out with these grips. But he's like 4 feet away from me.
Yeah.
He's not engaging.
Those arms are extended still.
Yeah, so he's not engaging me. He's not trying to choke me since he kind of has my back. There's nothing. And he's not letting me turn to face him. So I'm like, what do you want me to do? So I'm sitting on my butt. I look up at the ref, Casino, and I'm like, what do you want me to do? I just raised my arms like, I got to do Can you ding him for stalling?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want me to do, bro? You know?
Yeah.
So Casino dinged him for stalling.
Oh, wow.
Which you don't see often in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, especially not that BJJ Tour tournaments. Yeah.
Coming from wrestling, we do a lot of stalling calls.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, wow, I think that's the first stalling call I've ever seen in jiu-jitsu at that point.
Yeah.
But so he dinged him for stalling. Then the guy started engaging with me because Casino got on him, right? But I'm like, okay, cool, let's go. But anyways, ever since then, I found a picture of that, and it's just the funniest picture. Seeing this guy like locked out arms, bent over, and it's me sitting on my butt with my arms up, like, come at me, bro. You know? And just, I've kept that picture. So, but it was just an example of like this guy went on to beat me, and he actually went on to beat me a couple times throughout our career. So he's a good grappler.
Oh yeah.
But that first time we ever went against each other, he didn't know what to do. He's just, this is weird. I don't know what he's good at from his knees.
Right.
I'm nervous to put my arm in the wrong spot or put my leg in the wrong spot. So he was so cautious.
Yeah.
And it took him a while to feel me out. So I could feel the confusion of how do I grapple this guy?
Yeah. And that can be tough, you know, but the thing about it, like you said, there's always a different way. Like it may not be the conventional way, but there is a way to battle through those things. Let's back up a little bit to how you got introduced into jiu-jitsu. Who introduced you? What was the first experience like going into the gym?
So that was my brother was doing taekwondo at a place where they do multiple types of martial arts. My mom said, hey, you should go in there in the off season of wrestling and check out the other martial arts, see if one of them complements wrestling. So I went in there. This is 2006. Wasn't watching UFC yet. I never heard of jiu-jitsu, right? None of that. So I walk in, I talk to the owner, and I'm like, hey, I'm a wrestler. I'm looking to do something in the off season. What should I do? I think he had me try Krav Maga, jiu-jitsu, and like one other thing. And then jiu-jitsu was so much like wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm like, I love this. This is very much like what I've already been doing. But so from that day forward, I fell in love with it. And like, I want to learn this. And every off season of wrestling, I was doing jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And then once I stopped wrestling, then I just dove even deeper into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Now, at the time, were you mainly in the gi or no gi? Because no gi is so much more similar to the wrestling style, where the gi is, I mean, you put wrestlers in a gi, and it's a little bit confusing right off the bat. So was most of your training in the gi or no gi at the time?
At that time, I was under Gustavo Enriquez, and what he would do, if I remember correctly, is he would do like 3 months of no gi, 3 months of gi, and you'd alternate back and forth, something like that.
Yeah.
So I got pretty good exposure to both over time because he would just do gi season, no gi season kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And did you feel like it helped boost your wrestling at the time, or were you getting closely to going to the jiu-jitsu route?
I would say for me, I'm very kinesthetic, so it was good for me to learn wrestling ways of doing things, jiu-jitsu ways of doing things, and then in my mind, I see patterns.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw this guy and armbar him, or I'll throw this guy like this and hold him there because that's a pin. It was the same throw. It was the same mechanics.
Yeah.
So I could see all the patterns in wrestling and jiu-jitsu, how similar they are, and now just change the ending, a submission or a pin.
Yeah.
That's what I did with my Fight to Win match at Black Belt. That was a wrestling move. It's called a Peterson roll, and I put an armbar at the end of it.
Yeah.
You know, so that was totally a mixture of my years of wrestling and my years of jiu-jitsu put together into one.
Right.
So, so I'm a big advocate of training in multiple martial arts. Even if you have one favorite, train in a couple because it opens up your eyes to all the different possibilities, you know?
Right. I feel like something that really benefits your grappling style is your mind. and you're able to break things down. You're a very intellectual person when it comes to, you know, the way you look at grappling and the way you look at even bodybuilding and stuff like that you're into. Talk about how you developed that, or is it just something that just came natural to you when it came to, you know, the grappling arts?
I'd say, I mean, it was a requirement since that first thing I fell in love with, which was wrestling early in my life. I can't do most of these moves the conventional way, the way the coach is teaching. So I have to just look at it conceptually. I have to break it down like a mechanic. And okay, so you grabbed his head like this. He flipped over. Now he's on his back. How do I create that much leverage that I can flip him over his head like that?
Yeah.
And you did it with your leg. You're holding him in position, pinning him with your leg. Can I do that with my head? Can I do it with my arm? Can I do it with my hip?
Right.
What can I do it with? So I always had to look at it mechanically like that and look at the big picture instead of looking at it like I must do the move this way. I don't have to do any move any particular way. I have to do the concept, which is get the pin or get the armbar.
Very true.
Yeah.
Do you feel, and this may tie into my next question, but I wanted to talk about how you got introduced into to Casio. And not only that, but do you feel like there's a certain coach that helped you even more excel compared to another, or was there a concept that they were going over that helped you develop your game a little bit better?
Yeah, I feel like I can go a lot into that, but because I've had so many teachers over the years. But by far, my most influential teachers was my high school wrestling coach, Bruce Pearson and Grant Depew, both of them in my high school days for wrestling. And then Casio with my jiu-jitsu career. I was with Casio from purple to black. And just both of them were fantastic teachers. Both of them were fantastic at helping me figure out my game. And they just, they're both like high integrity men. They both just set the example for how to conduct yourself. I respect both of them just as human beings a lot, you know? So just the amount of days that I would see my high school wrestling coach or I would see Casio rolling with the best guys in the room and smashing them, you know? And I'm like, that's pretty awesome. Like Casio's not in his prime anymore, but I'll still see him smashing somebody who smashes me. And I'm like, that's badass, you know? So, and then same with my high school wrestling coach. He would, you know, if there was somebody in the room who needed to get humbled, my 47-year-old wrestling coach would say, come here, 18-year-old. Like you're getting a big mouth, and then throw him on his head. And
I've heard legendary stories about Coach Pearson.
Have you?
Yeah, my last name's Pearson as well.
Yeah.
So I remember my cousin, he wrestled a little bit at Granite Oaks back in the day, but he never really got deep into it. But I remember him talking in high school about Coach Pearson and how tough he was. And, you know, he was a different kind of coach, right?
Oh, yeah.
How did you get introduced to Casio? I know you met him at Purple Belt and started training with him. How did you build the relationship with Casio Warneck?
Well, so white through purple, I was with Gustavo Enriquez, who is a black belt under Casio.
Okay.
So really for white to purple, I hardly ever met Casio. I met him maybe 2 or 3 times. It was pretty brief, but I just always heard the millions of stories about him, the legend of Casio, and a million things that he's done that have blown my mind, how good he is, you know? So there was always this like, I don't know, just built-in respect of like he's the guy in this area, you know. But anyways, so I was looking around. I wanted to transfer schools. Just the school I was at, I had a lot of big guys that were upper belts anyway. I really only had one guy who was my belt level and my size. And we got sick of rolling with each other after 5-6 years of we're almost doing the same role, you know. You're gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do that, and then we're gonna
know each other's game really well at that point.
We would stall out in the same position almost every roll, and neither one of us know what to do from there because we're both purple belts.
Yeah.
So like I wanted something more, and then I had already gone to Casio's a couple of times, and like I love Casio and I love the training partners there because there was a lot more people my size and all the way up to black belt.
Right.
Versus at the school I was at before, it was kind of just purple and below at the time, right? So, yeah, I went to Casio's, started getting all these training partners that were better for me, more experience, my size, just awesome technicians. And then I got to know Casio so much more and just really respected him as a competitor, as a, you know, the jiu-jitsu side of him, and just as a man.
Right.
Just like, this is the guy who I want to get my black belt from. I really respect him, and just like it's an honor to be part of his team, you know?
When you first start jiu-jitsu, for a lot of people, it can seem very intimidating, meaning like there's not, black belts everywhere. Nowadays there are, but back when we started, there wasn't as many prominent black belts everywhere. And the thing about it is black belt seems so far away. It takes a lot longer to achieve the black belt in jiu-jitsu compared to some other martial arts that are out there. Did you know right away that you were going to stick with it and get to black belt, or were there times that you may have thought about quitting or have had your doubts about things?
I had the white and purple belt, or no, the white and blue belt thing.
Yeah.
Where you sit.
I call it the blue belt blues.
Yes, right. Get your ass kicked, and then you sit in the car, and you're like, "Well, that sucked."
Yeah.
And then like, okay, it happened again. It happened again. It happened again. So I had plenty of those times I sat in the car, and I would question, like, I don't know where my ceiling is as a handicapped man. So I had plenty of those days of, how far can I go? Can I ever legitimately get to a black belt level? I don't know where my ceiling is, and I don't have anybody that's really set an example for me.
Right.
I don't see a bunch of other handicapped black belts that are beating able-bodied black belts. Is it possible? I don't know.
Right.
But so I had to make that decision. I had to have that talk with myself at white and blue, like, deal with the ass kickings and find out where your ceiling is.
Yeah.
Do it for the next 20 years, and wherever your ceiling is, it is, but find it or quit.
Yeah.
And then I would say my wrestling years built into me that, like, losing sucks, but being a quitter's worse.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than a quitter.
Right.
I might lose, I might win, but I won't be a quitter. I can't. It's not in my DNA.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this jiu-jitsu thing for the rest of my life, and I'm going to figure out where my ceiling is. Hopefully it's at the black belt level. And I went on to see that, yeah, it is. I've beaten black belts before. Yeah. So my, I don't know, if I could go back and tell my blue belt self something, it's like, keep going. It's possible.
Yeah.
But I did have doubt in the beginning.
Absolutely. So a lot of people are like that. I mean, I remember going in, we were with a pretty tough group of guys. Our lineage is a very rough style, rough and tumble. We have a Caesar Gracie, Half Gracie style of jiu-jitsu. But I remember there was many months I went in at white belt, and I'm rolling with these purple belts and high level guys, and it took me forever before I even got a submission on anybody. Do you remember your first submission or your first time tapping somebody?
Not well. When I first started, it was really only me and one other guy.
Yeah.
I think that was the whole program when I first started jiu-jitsu, and it was me and it was another white belt. I had 5-6 years of wrestling experience. The other guy didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So I do distinctly remember being taught an Americana, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then we just sparred.
Yeah.
And so I just wrestled this guy to death and Americana'd him over and over and over. And it got to the point where, because he was kind of out of shape, and he didn't have any kind of background. I at least had 5-6 years of wrestling under my belt. Right. So after the 10th time I Americana'd him, because that's the only submission I was taught at the time, I kind of looking at the instructor like, do you want me to keep doing this? Like, I'm starting to feel bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then eventually other guys joined who were better, and then they start kicking my butt, and then the journey started. Then like, okay, I got to learn more than just an Americana.
Right. It can't be a one-trick pony in jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
But I do remember like my first submission like wasn't that big of a deal to me because I was just physically more of an athlete than the guy I was training with at the time. But I do remember my first tournament.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of a milestone when I did my first tournament at, I was still a white belt when I did my first jiu-jitsu tournament, and I got a submission. And I think I got it. It was some low probability arm bar and some goofy position because the other guy was also a white belt. So he walked right into it. But in my head, it was validation of like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. Like I just competed and I got a submission. It worked. I think I got a darce or an arm bar. But it gave me some validation.
Well, and being a wrestler, wrestling tournaments are something else, right? I mean, firsthand how intense a wrestling tournament can be, and the crowd screaming, everyone's going crazy. Jiu-jitsu tournaments can be like that, but I feel like they're a little bit more calm compared to the wrestling style. Did you feel that benefited you having that wrestling background going into a jiu-jitsu tournament? Like, all right, I'm used to competing. Yeah. I've done this before. It's nothing new to me.
Yeah, when it comes to nerves, I was totally used to that because I had done a lot of wrestling tournaments. So I'm getting on a mat, I'm grappling with somebody. Just the end goal is different.
Right.
So I didn't get so many like pre-competition nerves with jiu-jitsu. Yeah, that wasn't a big deal. It was more just I'm doing grappling with a different end goal. How do I get the submission now?
Yeah. Now, a few years ago, we recorded a podcast. We talked a little bit, and I remember you mentioning the way going into a tournament. Now, I've seen you compete before. You usually wear wrestling shoes.
Yep.
Talk about how it was getting IBJJF approved, and how you developed a way to compete in those types of organizations and get that thing going.
Yeah, so I wear leg braces that go from my knee down to my ankle. And so I always wear those pretty much 24/7 outside of when I'm going to bed, right? But so in class, it's not a big deal. I wear a good 3 or 4 knee pads on both my legs, right? And then I wear wrestling shoes. And every instructor I've ever been with has never cared, right? Yeah. Whatever, just do jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Almost every jiu-jitsu tournament I've ever done, they haven't cared either. Like almost every single one of them. IBJJF was the only one that didn't really like it. So I had a lot of talks with the head referee. Do you remember his name? Is that Mansour?
I can't think of it off the bat.
Yeah, I can picture his face in my head. It's not Mansour. I'm mixing him up with somebody, but I can picture his face in my head. But he's the head guy of IBJJF. And we just had a bunch of talks of like what's acceptable. And the compromise we came to is this: after a handful of experiments, I put a sock over my brace on my foot, on my entire shin and everything. And then I put duct tape around the sock, and it gave me some friction. Because at first he was okay with put a sock over it, put some knee pads over it, and that's acceptable. Just don't wear the wrestling shoes. But if I don't wear the wrestling shoes, it felt like I was on ice skates out there. I had no friction whatsoever. I couldn't even like sit and turtle. Yeah. If I just sit on my own ankles and turtle, my legs would slip out from underneath me. Yeah. Because I had no friction at all. So like this doesn't work. So eventually, one of my teammates was a nurse, and he stole some tape from the hospital that was like double-sided tape. Both sides were sticky. Yeah. And I just mummified both my legs with this tape. Right, and then that gave me the friction I needed. Yeah. So I'd put the sock on, I'd put some knee pads on, and I would mummify my entire foot with this sticky tape. It gave me the friction, and then that was our compromise with IBJJF. They were okay with it, and I was able to relatively grapple and feel like I had a wrestling shoe on, and I had some friction.
Yeah. Now, obviously, jiu-jitsu is a ground martial art primarily. And a lot of movements are developed from the guard. With that, now having limited use of your legs, right? How have you been able to adapt that game? I know you do a lot of turtle stuff, but is there a certain thing that you do to compensate for the guard position or anything like that? Or do you prefer to go to side control, or is it mainly like the turtle?
No, so if I'm on bottom, if I were to sum up my bottom game, turtle, bottom side control, bottom north south, but I'm very offensive from bottom side control and bottom north south. I have a lot of tricks from there that I've gathered over the years from my own study. I've done a lot of private lessons with a lot of different people over the years that have shown me some cool things. So shout out to Javier Vasquez for this. He taught me some awesome hand fighting systems from there, like constant framing. And how do we turn the framing into sweeps and submissions? And so I'm very, very offensive, like from these bad positions, you know? Yeah. And then I do a little bit of half guard. Here and there I'll get there. I do love deep half. I'll do a quick little deep half sweep once in a while. But for the most part, I'm just very offensive with turtle, with bottom side control, with bottom north south. And then in my head, it's wrestlers sit out. They're calling it panda guard now.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. So someone named
These new fancy things.
Yeah,
right?
They're calling it panda guard, but it's wrestlers sit out position. Yeah. Right. So I do a handful of things from a wrestler's sit out as well. So I'd say that sums up my bottom game. But I've found a way to make it all flow together where you're not getting anything on me, and I have traps set all over the place.
Yeah. I've personally rolled with you, and you're very, very offensive from positions that most people aren't offensive from. You know, it's a very unique style, and it works for you. You've been able to develop it very well. You know, you would think, you know, being on your back and side control, you have great frames, and you're able to create that space, get underneath whatever you have to do. And it's really transitioned well into the jiu-jitsu scene for you. You know, a lot of people may think that, you know, this person's going to start defending, but you're always on the offense. So It seems to work very well. You mentioned a lot of private lessons. I remember a story you told me a while back about some of those private lessons. I remember you telling me about Jeff Glover and doing a private with him. Talk about some of the people you've worked with. I know you work with Kurt. I know you've rolled with Half and
a ton,
guys like that. Talk about some of the experiences, some of the things you picked up from working with those high-level grapplers.
Well, so really cool story on that. I've done a lot of private lessons with a lot of people, and I've learned things from all of them. And Andros Bernovskis, who's at Legion with Keenan, right? I've done a bunch with him. Javier Vasquez, I've learned a lot from him. Jeff Glover, Leo Vieira, Leandro Vieira, Sanji Ribeiro. So it's really been cool to look back now as a black belt. Like, I've gotten to train with pretty much all my heroes, you know? But anyways, one really cool story. Shout out to Leo Vieira. He's a really, really good human being. So I was a blue belt. I went to Worlds. I went against Edwin Najimy. You know who he is? No, so he's a triangle master, but we're both blue belts at the time. So he's still, you know, finding his game. But so he destroys me from Spider Guard at Worlds, and I don't know how to hand fight or anything at that time, right? So he kicks my ass from Spider Guard and triangles me, and he didn't get the tap. I survived his triangle. But the score was probably like 22-0 or something, right? Something horrible. He kicked my ass. So I came home from Worlds, and I'm obsessed with learning guard passing. Right, passing spider and just being an offensive guard player or offensive passer. I mean, kill all the guards. Right. So my instructor at the time, he's teaching me what he can, but he says, "Hey, the badass guard passer when I was coming up was Leo Vieira. He's the guy. So look him up because he was the world-renowned guard passing master. Right." So I look into him, and he's the guy who made cartwheel guard passing famous, right? And a lot of other things too. He's really revolutionary, right? But I'm like, okay, that's cool, but that doesn't apply to me. I can't do a cartwheel. But anyways, I'm looking into him deeper and deeper, and then I find his email or something at his academy that he was at. So I just send him an email, and I'm a blue belt. I'm a handicapped blue belt, just some guy, you know. I sent him a message and like, hey, I'm handicapped. I'm a blue belt. I'm trying to figure out how to pass guard. I know that you're the world-renowned guard passing master. Is there any advice you would give me? And I'm thinking, I don't know if he's going to message me back. Like, I'm not his student. I'm not part of his lineage. I'm not paying him. I'm just some guy sending him an email, right? But he gets back to me and he says, hey, I'd be happy to help you. Send me a video of you training and I'll give you some advice. I'm like, wow, he actually got back to me because like he's won everything.
You would think that's like they don't got the time for me, right?
Exactly. I was thinking he doesn't have the time for me. You know, he's Bucec's coach. You know what I mean? Like he's the man, right? So, but he gets back to me. So I'm like, that's really cool. So I went to class. I rolled with Randy, our mutual friend, and I filmed myself trying to pass Randy's guard for a couple minutes. So I go back, I email him that, and then I never heard from him again. So I thought, okay, he's busy training some other world champion or something, so he doesn't have time for me, nor does he owe me anything, right? But anyways, so then a couple years, like say 2 or 3 years go by. I'm a purple belt at this time. My friend was going to a all-women's Kyotera seminar or something.
I remember that.
Right? There was
I had a few students go to that years ago.
Yeah, they've gone around in Girls and Geese or something, one of those
something
things.
Like that.
But so I said, okay, I'm going to drive down there with my friend. I'll drop her off at Kyotera's. And then I said, I'm going to go over to AKA. I've never been there. So I look into AKA. The head jiu-jitsu coach there at the time was Leandro Vieira. That's Leo's brother. So I messaged him and said, hey, here's my situation. I'm a handicapped purple belt. I'm going to be in the area. What do you charge for a private lesson? Right. So he tells me his price and everything, and we set that up. Let's do a private lesson. So go there, go to AKA, do the private lesson. He blows my mind. He taught me a lot of things I still use to this day. So Leandro Vieira is awesome too. Really cool guy, really good technique. So I loved the private lesson. And then at the end of the private lesson, he says, hey, you want to meet my brother Leo? And I'm like, hell yeah, I didn't know he was here. He's not in Brazil training some world champion somewhere, right? Hell yeah, I want to meet him. So he's like, oh, I'll go get him. So he goes and gets him. Leo comes in. And at first, it's just a general conversation of how long you've been doing jiu-jitsu and whatever. And then I start to say, hey, Leo, you probably don't remember this, but 3-4 years ago, I sent you an email. And then he interrupted me and he said, oh, that was you. I totally remember who you are. I got your email. I got the video of you trying to pass your buddy's guard. I then took that video. I went to class that day. I taped my own feet together And I got on the mat
Wow.
and rolled around on my knees
Yeah.
with my feet taped together and figured out a couple guard passes that I would do if I couldn't use my legs. When I went back to send you the video, I couldn't find your email.
Yeah. Wow.
And I thought that just humbled the hell out of me, that like, you're one of the most famous, jiu-jitsu, you're one of the most famous grapplers of our generation. And you tied your legs together and rolled around on the mat, and you were going to like do this for me when I'm not your student. I'm not affiliated with you in any way. I'm not paying you.
Right.
So anyways, just
that's pretty unique though. Like, and that really shows a lot, right? Because you don't know how to adapt unless you're in that situation, right? So for him to actually do that and try to come up with a few things for you, that's pretty remarkable, and not all instructors will do that, and there's some guys that will be like, oh man, I'll just, send him a quick email back, but to actually physically put himself in a similar situation to you. Yeah. Obviously, it's a completely different situation, but you know, to try to develop some movements for you, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and he wanted to like challenge himself and like, okay, what would I do if I couldn't use my legs? I'm trying to pass the guard from my knees. What would I do? And just that he would take the time to do that for me when I'm a nobody, you know, comparatively, compared to him.
Right.
So I just thought like, that's awesome. You're such a good like human being that you would take the time to do that, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty badass.
Yeah. So anyways, just that particular private lesson stuck with me just out of, you're such a good dude. And then, so again, that was when I did a private lesson with Leandro, his brother. Then a couple months later, I did a private with Leo, so
it opened the door too, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure to build the relationship even more than just an email, right? A cold call email.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so I mean, I've done a lot of private lessons over the years, but just that's one that stuck with me. It was so like heartwarming, you know?
Right. Do you feel like, now I was talking to a good friend of mine, he's a black belt here in town, and, you know, there's always good seminars and things like that, but seminars can be kind of one-sided. You know, they have these certain techniques, you got to do them a certain way, you know, and you go through. But private lessons is where you really break out, you know, and you could really define different things in your game. Do you feel like more private lessons, you get a little bit more out of them than the seminars?
That's what I have to do because, if I show up to a seminar, I don't know what you're teaching, and it's nothing but X guard. Yeah. That doesn't apply to me at all. No. You know? Yeah. So I'm really picky with my seminars if I go to one. I've been to a few, but like not many. Just only when I knew that guy's going to teach things that will apply to my game because he's famous for it. Or I'm going to go there with very specific questions, and I'll ask him after the seminar, hey, how do you do that thing that I always see you do? Can you show me real quick? You know? But other than that, I've done a ton of private lessons because the whole thing is question-based. Right. And I come there with very specific questions, help me work on this and that. And sometimes I've gone to some private lessons and, hey, can we roll for 10 minutes? Yeah. And now give me your assessment of my game. Right. I want to just give you, here's what I do. Where would you add to it? Yeah. You know, I did that with another great one was like with Ryan Hall. He's one of my jiu-jitsu heroes. Yeah. So I just rolled with him for a little bit and then picked his brain based on, hey, what are you feeling with me? Where should I improve my game? He gave me a bunch of cool stuff, and then he's actually the one who encouraged me to teach. Yeah. That was a real honor for me. He said that, like, you have a good game. You have a lot of unique, interesting entries into different things, and, like, you're good at it. You need to be teaching it. So that's really the catalyst that sparked me to actively, like, search out where can I teach? Should I join a team somewhere and teach with them or what? But, like, I actually should be an instructor. So it was cool to hear that from one of my heroes, though. You know?
And Ryan Hall, man, I'll never forget. He had that fight against BJ Penn, and he did that Imanari roll into a leg lock. And BJ Penn, to me, it has always been a high-level grappler. You know, you hear these legendary stories about how people couldn't take him down. They call him the prodigy. He was a natural and all this stuff. And the way Ryan Hall rolled into that Imanari on him, and, I mean, got him pretty quick with it once he set it up, was just pure beauty, right?
Yeah, it was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt like, now it's been a while since I've seen that fight, but he was quite a far away from BJ when he did that. Yeah. And man, he rolled BJ up, and you know, obviously it wasn't prime BJ Penn, but I mean, still to be able to submit a legend like BJ Penn in jiu-jitsu, like, I don't know if BJ's ever been submitted in jiu-jitsu like that.
I'd have to think about it, but definitely not much. Yeah,
it's tough to, you know, even going back, he's lost some decisions. He's had some, you know, some stand-up fights and stuff like that, but to be able to tap a guy like BJ Penn, is pretty incredible.
Yep.
So I know you got into teaching once you got your black belt. How long did it take you to achieve the black belt in jiu-jitsu?
Let's see. I started in 2006 jiu-jitsu. I think I took 1 year off somewhere in the middle of that. And then I got my black belt 2019, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever experience any major injuries or anything like that you had to overcome?
I wouldn't say like major, but there was a couple times I had to take, say, 3 months off. Like I remember one time, like my shoulder was getting really bad, and it never got to the point where I needed surgeries. But I could feel like, oh, I'm heading that way.
You're
if
lucky.
I don't, yeah,
I've had 2 on the same shoulder,
Yeah.
man. So the shoulder's the worst. Shoulders and hips, it's
Yeah.
those joints that, man, they just. I remember talking to my doctor, and he was talking about shoulders, and he's like, you don't realize how much your shoulder controls in your body. It controls almost every part. Anytime you're moving, your
Yeah.
shoulder's involved.
Yeah.
And you got a fucked up shoulder, you're definitely going to feel it. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had 10 dislocations on the same side. It is not a fun injury to experience. Knees are another one us grapplers go through. So no major injuries, huh?
Yeah, I mean, the most I think I ever had to take off was maybe 3-ish months to let something fully heal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not real long.
So 2019, you achieve your black belt. Obviously, you go through a very high-level grappler with Casio. Now you said Ryan kind of planted that seed in your brain to start teaching.
Yeah.
How did you go about finding the right school, the right partner to teach with? And then I visited that school. Man, it was some years back, but
Yeah.
it was a great experience, man. You're an awesome teacher. You break things down in the movements. I remember I learned a ton from just rolling with you. I've rolled with you a couple times, but I learned a ton from it. And anytime I was in Roseville, I remember my cousin going, "You gonna go see Tyler? You're gonna go train at his gym?" And I tried to every time I could, but you definitely had the mind for it. So talk about those early days of teaching. I've had friends on, I've had instructors on, and they talk about that's when you really develop, like you break things down with teaching, and it kind of elevates a lot of people's game with teaching. Did you feel the same way, that it kind of helped you break through a little bit on certain things?
Well, I'd say it's kind of unique with me and my teaching experience, I guess. But I'll kind of go one thing at a time. First, Ryan kind of planted that seed in my head. I got that private lesson with Ryan Hall the day before Roseville shut down because of COVID. It was literally the very next day. All the mandates went in place, right? So then we didn't do nothing for however long, right? But it was stewing in my head that whole time. Like, when we open up, I want to teach somewhere. So we start opening up. I message Casio and like, hey, what do you think about me teaching? And he's like, absolutely. You should be teaching. I don't know of anybody looking for a teacher right now. We're in a weird place right now with COVID.
Yeah.
But you're free to look around. I encourage you to look around. So I just put it out on social media. Hey, I'm looking to teach somewhere. If there's any jiu-jitsu schools around the area that's looking for an instructor or at least a co-instructor, hit me up. And then one of my longtime friends, Stacy Councilman, she had just opened a school.
Yeah.
Right. And she was a purple belt, but she had just opened a place where she wanted to do kind of multiple types of martial arts. And obviously jiu-jitsu is one of them. So she said, hey, get over here. You're our new head instructor. This works out perfect. We've known each other for a long time. There's a lot of trust there. So then I was head instructor of her school for about 2 years. And then eventually that school didn't quite make it. That school had to close down. But then I ended up going to Aries in Roseville. The people who run the Aries school in Roseville, I was with them from white to purple belt.
Yeah.
Right. So I kind of grew up in jiu-jitsu with them all the way up to purple belt. And then we kind of went our separate ways in life just because, life pulls you different ways.
Right.
But but they said, hey, we'd love to have you back over here. Now, like, the boys are back together again, So I messaged Casio and got his blessing on that.
Yeah.
And he knew I grew up with those guys.
Right.
So I got his blessing. And then now I've been teaching at Aries for 2.5 years now, something like that, in Roseville. Yeah.
Yeah. Aries is a really good program. We have an Aries school in Stockton with Kalani, black belt under Casino, and I've done seminars here in town with Samir Satri. Actually, Samir was just here maybe a month ago, and we did a Nogi seminar to help raise some funds for him. But it was an awesome experience, man. I anytime Samir's in town, I'm always trying to catch a little bit. We kind of share a similar lineage in a way. I remember when Caio Terra first came down from Brazil. He was working with my instructor on his black belt training, and Samir was with him. Samir and Kyle were together back then, and I mean, Samir was a young guy. Like looking back, I'll show you this old picture I have on my phone of Kyle and Samir at our academy back in the mid 2000s. So it's pretty cool, and Aries is a good program. I know you've worked with guys too that I know as well. Barber John, right?
Oh yeah.
He's cut my hair a few times. I remember my cousin took me in to get a haircut before his wedding, and John cut my hair. And I just remember him going, "Oh, you train jiu-jitsu, huh? You're a purple belt. All right." And we talked a little bit and we caught up. And but there's all kinds of good relationships in this community, and it's a really good thing to see. Talk about some of the relationships you've built along the way with some of the people you've trained with, and just overall the community of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I mean, it's a close-knit community, and everybody becomes family, and we all support each other regardless of like what team you're on. Right. If somebody says, "Hey, somebody at my academy is going through tough times. We got to raise a bunch of money for them. They got some crazy surgery they got to do or something." Right. You put the word out, and then every academy in the area is going to come to your open mat and donate $20, and boom, we raise $5,000 for this person in 1 hour.
Right.
So the jiu-jitsu community is really good about like not caring so much about like what team you're from. We are all team jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And we're all gonna support each other. We're all gonna be there for each other when we need to be.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first started, it was a little bit different. It was always a more of a competitive vibe in the jiu-jitsu. There wasn't many black belts here in town. There were no black belts for the longest time. My instructor was one of the highest guys in the area, and he was a brown belt instructor under Caesar. And so I remember there's a karate or taekwondo guy in town, Phil Torres, and he opened up his spot. And I remember the Diaz brothers kind of partnered up with him, and they had their thing going, and it was always like a little rivalry, like we never cross train with them. They didn't cross train with us. There was always some sort of, little thing, but I don't know when the transition really took place, but jiu-jitsu kind of opened up a little bit to where cross-training was more accepted and more available. There wasn't as much of a animosity when you went into other gyms. I'm sure you've seen that too, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was kind of our generation, though. I started 2006, and that around maybe that generation of people were like, "Hey, let's not do that.
Yeah,
like, let's all be cool, and let's not make it like jiu-jitsu politics. You know what I mean? Let's not do that. Here and there, someone will have beef with somebody because it's human nature, but okay, you guys have beef. We don't have to have beef with you. Like whatever. So I feel like that whole kind of thing has died more and more over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And cross-training is very encouraged and welcomed at 90% of schools that you'll ever run into, you know, and hey, let's share the art. Let's share, show me your jiu-jitsu. I'll show you mine. Right. Every single brown belt and black belt has their own weird way of doing something.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, show me your weird interpretation of arm bars, and I'll show you my weird interpretation of arm bars. It works for both of us.
Yeah.
Right. So let's steal from each other. Let's share the art,
Yeah. Now, somewhere along the line, you made the transition over into bodybuilding. And let's talk about that and how it's helped your jiu-jitsu game with working out like that. And you've done some major competitions. You helped establish the wheelchair division in Mr. Olympia. So talk about some of those things a little bit. Yeah.
So, I mean, with the fitness side, I've been a personal trainer for over 10 years, right? I got my degree, and like that's my main job is personal trainer, and then teaching jiu-jitsu is kind of my side thing, But so that's a huge thing I can rant on for hours. That is our best defense to ward off jiu-jitsu injuries, is like keep both sides of your body balanced when it comes to strength, right? That's our biggest defense against, getting injured less. And when we're going against each other in jiu-jitsu and our skill and knowledge is equal, whoever's bigger, stronger, faster wins.
Yeah.
Because our skill and knowledge is equal.
Right.
Right. So I think that's another thing that's died over the years is like strength doesn't matter in jiu-jitsu. Like, yeah, it does. Oh yeah, it does.
There's a reason guys are doing steroids. There's a reason there's big, strong guys out there.
Like just when our skill is equal, right? You got Kyotera, who's tiny, and we see him destroy giant people because his skill and knowledge is greater than the big muscle guy in front of him. Yeah. Right. But if the skill and knowledge is the same, then how big, strong, fast, coordinated, explosive you are totally matters, right? So I've always been really into that, like the science of that, and like how do we perform to the best of our ability and ward off injuries. So I love teaching that. I've always been doing it for myself, and then I do it for my clients, you know, just to perform better on the mat and ward off injuries.
Yeah. I've seen you post before and afters of a lot of your clients and the progress they've made, and it's undeniable. You obviously know what you're doing when it comes to working out. You're in great shape. But like, do you ever hear those people that try to come up with like different excuses on why they can't work out or why they don't have the time? And then you're over here just like, come on, dude, what's your excuse?
And it's the same people. They make excuses for everything. Why they can't show up to the gym and why they can't show up to jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And like, well, that's just the kind of person you're deciding to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Right.
You got to make that decision.
And like successful people are the same, whether you're successful in business, you're successful in sports, whatever. It's the same, like, no excuses attitude where so which type of person are you going to choose to be? The excuses person or no excuses person? It is what it is, right? Like, so yeah, just, it's that choice that you make, you know?
Yeah. I always say, anytime someone asks you something or there's a problem that persists in life, there's two buckets. Mm-hmm. One's got solutions, one's got excuses, and you can pull from either one of those at any time.
Yep.
Right. You can either pull from the excuses bucket on why you can't do something or why it's too hard or why it's not going to work for you, or you can find a solution on how to make it work for you, how to evolve from that.
Yeah.
And it's really that simple in life, and like you said, it comes down to business. It comes down to life, you can pull from either one of those buckets at any time. And it's just which one you decide to pull from. Right.
Yeah. And it makes me think about those white and blue belt days for me when I was questioning how far can I go as a handicap man in this sport where we're hyperextending each other's limbs and choking each other. Right.
Yeah.
But like, well, if I quit, I'll never find out the answer to that.
Yeah.
And like, well, what if I dedicate my life to this thing and I don't end up being that good at it? I'm like, well, what would you have been doing otherwise?
Yeah.
Right? I'd rather spend my life chasing something. And if I don't reach my ultimate goal, okay, it wasn't in the cards for me, but I spent my life actually chasing something, not just saying, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And then I chase nothing my whole life.
Yeah.
Right? I'm okay with not quite reaching the full goal, but I want to look back on my life and know that I chased things.
Yeah.
I found out where is my ceiling, where's my potential ceiling,
Right. Failure's a part of success, right?
Yep.
You got to know how to fail, so you really appreciate that success, I don't know anybody that, unless you're Gordon Ryan or something, but he's even experienced failure before.
Those are the 1%ers,
yeah.
And there's a reason that they're 1%ers. 99% just don't even have the ability to do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I thought about for myself is, well, there's not a bunch of handicapped people winning ADCC.
Yeah.
How far can I go, though? It's an intriguing question.
Yeah.
I don't know how far I can go, but I will keep on, I'll keep on finding out. I am kind of done competing with jiu-jitsu. I'm very happy with how that last match went, that I won one black belt fight on the Fight to Win stage in front of my hometown crowd.
That's a big stage, too.
Like, it couldn't have gone more perfect that night, Right. But so I'm glad to kind of bow out on a good win like that. And now my competitive spirit is all about bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. But I'm forever going to chase being better at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
because
the knowledge is always something we got to be chasing.
Yeah, you always know 1% of what you could know in jiu-jitsu, right? So I'm always playing with a new technique, a new concept. I still intend on doing seminars and private lessons to learn little tricks, little weird things that I've never learned before. Yeah. Because I know that there's so much more to learn, and I know that I'm not at my jiu-jitsu ceiling yet of potential.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to reach that ceiling because it's always going to keep moving up, right? Yeah. Jiu-jitsu is always evolving. Like you said, there's new guards coming out, Panda Guard, K Guard, all kinds of different things. Jeff Glover has the Donkey Guard,
Yeah.
So there's always new techniques, new submissions, new things coming out that people are evolving you know, I contribute a lot of that to, you know, the internet, the rise of YouTube. You know, now it's so readily available. When I started in 2005, YouTube wasn't what it is now. And, you know, Instagram didn't have a million techniques. You know, back then there was MySpace, and I don't think people were showing many jiu-jitsu techniques on it. But it's evolved quite a bit into what it is now. And you know, that ceiling's always moving up. So even, you know, if you reach a certain height in jiu-jitsu or experience a certain success, there's still a lot of meat on the bone still.
Yeah. And I'd say, like, my progress in jiu-jitsu is going to go a lot slower now because, like, number one, my competitive spirit is in bodybuilding right now. So there is a chunk of my heart and my weekly dedication that's going toward bodybuilding. And the other thing is, we're talking about it earlier. When I'm teaching, it's a unique thing with me being a jiu-jitsu instructor, because like I'm always teaching the things that I know, obviously, but I'm always learning new things to teach my students as well. Right? I want to be the best instructor that I can be, but in my unique situation as a handicapped man, a lot of the things I'm teaching I can't physically do. But I know how to do it. I know how to teach it. I can tell you exactly what you're doing wrong, why your fireman carry didn't work. I can't do a fireman carry though. Right? So that's the thing is I do spend a good chunk of time learning and teaching things to my students I can't physically do. So this is making your game better as my student. It's not making my game better. So I recognize like the choice I'm making to be an instructor and be a bodybuilder, it is slowing down my jiu-jitsu progress for myself. But I plan on doing jiu-jitsu to the day that I die, so I'm not in a hurry. You know?
Some of my favorite videos I've seen you post are working out in the gym. And dude, it's amazing to see, like, you set up the camera, you'll go to your station, right? And man, I've seen you climb up those machines, all kinds of different things to adapt, right? And you know, most people would be like, oh, I can't get up there, right? Whatever the excuse is. But you're always seeming to find solutions, and you know, developing your workouts. And I've seen over the past several years, you know, your physique going into Mr. Olympia, and you know, it's gotten better and better, and your poses and different things like that. Let's talk a little bit about the bodybuilding scene. How did you help establish the wheelchair division and be involved in that to get to that stage that you want to be at?
Well, so the reason that wheelchair bodybuilding exists today on the biggest stages is because of Nick Scott. He's the chairman of our division, if that's the right terminology to use, right? He's really the guy who runs our division. And so his vision started it all, right? Because he fell in love with bodybuilding after his accident. He was in a car accident when he was in high school.
Oh, wow.
But so he went through his depression days and everything. But then I don't know his story in major detail, but something sparked him. He turned his life around and he got this amazing physique. He fell in love with bodybuilding. And then he knew, okay, I'm not the only person in a wheelchair who loves this. There's no way I'm the only person in the world. So he reached out. He talked to all the right people in the bodybuilding world behind the scenes. Like, can I create a wheelchair bodybuilding show? If I get the interest, if I can bring the people, you know, will you let me do this? Give me the stage for an hour. So we got the promoters and everybody to give him the chance. And then he reached out, and he reached out over and over for years to all these different people in wheelchairs. I'm one of them. And he said, hey, wheelchair bodybuilding exists. You know, here's a show date. Be there, you know. So that's how I originally got into it. He reached out to me on, I think, MySpace way long ago. I was already a personal trainer, so I was already doing videos of me working out and stuff, right? Training my clients. So he reached out to me on like MySpace or Facebook or something in 2015. And he said, hey, you have a great physique. You should do wheelchair bodybuilding. Here's the information. There's a show in this state on this day. Let's do it. And I'm like, damn, I'm already so deep into fitness. I'm already a personal trainer. I do have to do this almost like a bucket list thing for myself. Damn, I have to do it, you know? So I did the process. I don't know if you really follow bodybuilding, but
a little bit. I got some friends into it.
Do you know who Jeremy Bundia is?
No.
So there's different divisions in bodybuilding. One of the divisions is men's physique. He's the greatest of all time in men's physique. I grew up with him. He's one of my personal friends, right? So I hit him up and I'm like, hey, bro, like he had already won 2 or 3 Olympias.
Wow.
So literally best on the planet, right? So I'm like, hey, thinking about doing my first bodybuilding show, and now that this wheelchair bodybuilding division exists. And he's like, hell yeah, I'll help you do it. So he was my first coach.
Wow.
I went through the process, right? And I won my division, and then I took second in the overall, which is all the champions going against each other, kind of like the absolute in jiu-jitsu, right? So I had a positive first experience in bodybuilding, and I'm like, I love this process, right? So then ever since then, I've kind of divided my jiu-jitsu and bodybuilding, and my heart is in both, you know? And then after I got my my black belt win, that kind of like gave me closure. Like, okay, I can look back at myself when I was a blue belt wondering, should I quit? Am I ever going to make it? Can I ever get to a black belt level? Well, I got my own validation there. I got to the black belt level, and I beat a black belt on the Fight to Win stage. Right. So I felt like I can close this chapter as a jiu-jitsu competitor. I have peace with it, you know? Now I can just really focus my competitive energy on the bodybuilding stage. Right. So again, that was kind of long-winded, but
no, it's all good. Were there many other bodybuilding competitions before Olympia put the wheelchair division in place?
So now with that, it started off as like amateur competitions, and then the amateur competitions got going a bit. There was competitors showing up, and enough that it showed the bodybuilding people behind the scenes, like, okay, there is need for this division. People are going to show up. There's competitors, not just two of them. Like, okay, there's a handful, right? So this is worth creating, right? Yeah. So it grew and grew, and eventually they created pro shows for wheelchair bodybuilding, meaning you could win your pro card. Yeah. So if you're the best of the amateurs, boom, you get your pro card. Now it's like going from, you know, high school basketball to the NBA. Now you're with the pros, right? So then that got traction going, right? And now it's just grown and grown and grown and grown. Yeah. So and that was all happening long before I got into it. Yeah. By the time I got into it, I won my pro card in 2018. Oh, wow. So, and I kind of just wanted to do another show. I went into it taking it seriously because I take everything seriously, but I didn't know if I was going to win. Right. You know, I didn't win the pro card at my last bodybuilding show, so I don't know if I'm going to win it at this next one. But I showed up and I won, and I'm like, oh, holy shit! I'm a professional bodybuilder now. What does this mean?
Now, with getting your pro card, do you have to place a certain level in the top 10, top 5?
You have to. No, you have to win. You have to. Putting it in jiu-jitsu terms, you have to win your weight class and then win the overall. Okay. Putting it in jiu-jitsu terms, right? Yeah. So I had to win my weight division, and then we do this thing called the overall, or like the absolute, right? So then I won the overall. That's how I won my pro card, 2018. And then at that time, at the pro level, there was already a couple of wheelchair pro shows. The biggest one was the Arnold Classic, Arnold Schwarzenegger's show. Yeah. That was the biggest pro stage that we were allowed to compete in as pro wheelchair bodybuilders. Yeah. 2018, I win my pro card, and then right after that, the Olympia said, okay, you can be on our stage. Badass. And then Nick Scott.
That's like a dream come true, right?
That was what Nick Scott had been fighting for like 10 years. I mean, I have to ask him. I don't know when he even started, but that I'm sure for Nick, that was like, that's what he's been fighting for, is to get wheelchair bodybuilding on the biggest stages in the world. And he wasn't even a competitor at this time anymore. He was just doing it as a promoter, opening the door for people like me. Wow. Right? So anyways, so the Olympia says, hey, we're going to give you guys a shot. Well, let's see if the crowd likes you. Let's see if... Yeah. So we'll give you guys a shot in 2018. We'll have a wheelchair bodybuilding competition on the Olympia stage. So Nick hit up the top guys, and he hit me up, even though I was new. Wow. I just won my pro card.
That's awesome.
Hey, you want to do the Olympia? And I'm like, holy shit, what? Yeah. The fuck? What? What the fuck? You know? Yeah. I'm like... So like major imposter syndrome because I'm new. Right. Like I'm the new pro, but I'm not going to say no. Right.
That's the stage everyone strives to get towards, right? With the bodybuilding.
That's the stage that launched Arnold's entire life.
Right.
Right. Arnold won the Olympia 7 times.
Did you get to meet him?
Yeah, I met him at the Arnold Classic.
Okay. Yeah.
But in Arnold's life, he won the Olympia 7 times. That's what got him kind of in the door with Hollywood, and it kind of grew from there, right? So like winning the Olympia is what launched Arnold's entire life. Yeah. So it's just crazy to be on that stage with that kind of history, right? You know? Yeah. But anyways, so yeah, I got to be part of the first ever wheelchair Olympia, the first time the Olympia allowed our division on the stage. Awesome. I got my ass handed to me. Yeah. But I still got to be part of it. Right, you know? Right. And then over the years, I've moved up the rankings, and I've gotten better. I've placed better, you know. So my I've done 6 Olympias now, I believe. My best placing is 4th, but I've placed everywhere from 4th to 11th.
Yeah.
It's gone up and down over the years. So,
yeah, that's pretty awesome. Do they have a women's division in the wheelchair?
Not really. I mean, there's a couple women that like they have good physiques and they're showing interest, but there's not enough of them to create a division.
Right.
So when we have one or two that like, okay, you're being persistent, you have a great physique, you're being like, I want to do this, we've gotten the Olympia's permission to bring one or two women. They'll come to the Olympia with us, and they'll be like a special guest poser.
Nice.
So they'll come out, and
they're still involved.
Yeah, they'll come out, they'll do a little routine, show their physique, and then they'll typically do a little speech like, hey, other women in wheelchairs, if you show up, we're going to create this division. Get up here with me. So they'll do a little thing just to get people going.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you feel like down the road we might see a women's division in Olympia? Yeah,
it's purely a matter of numbers.
Yeah,
and that's what we're still building with the guys. Like we have a lot of momentum going with the guys now. There's a probably, I'd have to ask Nick, but there's probably a good 60 or so wheelchair pros.
Yeah.
So people who won their pro card.
That's
there's
impressive.
even more. There's even more at the amateur level.
Yeah.
So I'm talking people that are serious about this. They went to nationals. They won their pro card. They're at the pro level. There's probably around 50 to 60 worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty good.
So the last couple Olympias we've had around like 8 to 12 people on the Olympia stage for wheelchair. So it's a good group of people, and they all look amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and we're going at it. So now the females have to do it.
Yeah.
But it just takes a long time to generate that much interest.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
and I'm sure down the road, like it's very possible, you know, like it just takes time. Even if in jiu-jitsu, you think about 10 years ago, there wasn't as many women's divisions and things like that. Not many women were competing.
Same thing.
And now it's more prominent than anything, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Women's MMA.
Yeah.
It's
women's
the same
MMA.
thing.
Same thing.
Same
Dana
thing.
White said he'll never have it. And now it's one of the fastest growing divisions out there. So
women's wheelchair bodybuilding just has to do the same thing that women's MMA did. It just more interest, more competitors, get the momentum going.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
Now I saw you post something a while back. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there a documentary coming out or already came out?
It already came
out.
out.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's called. Oh man, what's it called? Human Playground.
Okay.
It's called Human Playground, and then I don't remember the episode number that we are, but we are on that documentary. It's a bunch of episodes. And the name of our episode is In Pursuit of Perfection.
Okay.
And then, so they followed us around the Olympia in 2020, I believe it was.
Okay.
And they just did a thing on us. Like, here's the wheelchair bodybuilders. Here's them backstage. So you see me and a bunch of other guys in it. And they're just giving an insight into, hey, this exists. And here's a bunch of cool stories. Because our whole division is full of incredible stories. We have guys that have overcome everything. I'd say I like to kind of jokingly say I'm one of the more boring stories in our division because I was born with spina bifida.
Right.
Like when you ask, what's your story? Why are you in a wheelchair? I went, well, I was born like this.
Yeah.
Versus almost everyone else in our division, I was hit by a car. I was shot.
Mm-hmm.
I fell off a roof. One of our guys, a tree landed on him.
Wow.
Yeah, so like it's a bunch of insane stories.
Yeah.
And it's a bunch of guys who said, okay, this horrible life-altering thing happened to me, but I'm not going to be a victim.
Right.
I'm going to flip the story around. I'm going to look like a superhero. I'm going to get on the Olympia stage like Arnold did.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to be a victim. And fuck what happened to me.
Right.
You know?
Do you feel like it might be a little bit easier with you? That's all you know, right?
Yeah.
And for these guys, you know, it's a completely, 360, 180, whatever you want to call it, turn in their entire life.
Yeah.
So do you feel like it may come a little bit easier for you to be more accepting of certain things or limitations that you may have?
Yeah, I never had to overcome trauma. Just
Right.
I was born like this, and this is the life I've always known.
Right.
Versus some of these guys lived 20 years able-bodied
Right.
and then got shot one day or whatever happened to them, and then poof, they can't walk.
Right.
So that's where I'm always most impressed with whenever we get a new guy who wins his pro card, he joins us. Then all of us who've been doing this a while, we're like, hey, who's the new guy?
Yeah.
You know, let's scope him out. First of all, how good of a physique does he have?
Right.
Is he a threat? You know, if he looks too good, we got to get him out of here, you know. But then also like, okay, what's the story? Why in a wheelchair? You know, then we, and we accept him. Of course, we're like a very loving family of competitors, just like in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But whenever I see somebody join our pro division and then I learn the story, and maybe they were in a car accident 3 years ago, I always think like, man, that was not long ago.
Yeah.
Just
3 years is like yesterday.
Yeah, there's been a couple guys that like only 3 or 4 years ago, your entire life drastically changed. You whatever, had a short grieving period, and now you're moving on, and now you're on the professional bodybuilding stage, giving me a run for my money. And I'm like, wow, you didn't spend 10 years being depressed. You spent like a month being depressed, and then you got over it. Like, damn,
that's inspiring.
I salute you. You know,
that's very inspiring.
Some of those guys, I'm like, that you're really mentally strong, that you didn't fall into a deeper pit mentally for longer than you did. Holy shit. You know?
Yeah. So, where do most bodybuilders have like a background? Do they have like a sports type of background usually, or anything like that?
So here's a thing that I've enjoyed seeing the last couple of years. Bodybuilders and the grappling MMA community were exactly the same people. Exactly the same people. So a ton of retired bodybuilders are going into jiu-jitsu right now.
Oh, wow.
A ton of them, including my coach, Dom Cardone.
Okay.
He spent years bodybuilding. He got his pro card, and then he had to retire for whatever reasons, and now he's doing jiu-jitsu and MMA.
Yeah.
So like we click really well because we're the same person. You know? And then there's a handful of Mr. Olympias. They're Olympia champions. They have a background in wrestling, right?
Wow.
And they're like, well, wrestling didn't work out. I wasn't the next Jordan Burroughs. I didn't make the Olympic team, but I had a pretty good physique, and I have insane work ethic from my wrestling days. So they translated it into bodybuilding. I can think of maybe 3 or 4 Mr. Olympia winners that like they wrestled in college.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
So yeah, bodybuilders and like the fight community, they're exactly the same people.
Yeah. Is there like a certain I don't know how to word this correctly, but like, are there injuries associated with bodybuilding that are pretty common? Bicep tears or anything like that?
It could be anything. I wouldn't say there's necessarily one that pops out in my head. It just, are you lifting smart? Are you lifting safe? But I mean, you're pushing it, right? So you're pushing it in the weight room, just like jiu-jitsu guys are pushing it in the practice room. And every top level jiu-jitsu guy, you know, pops something in their knee at some point, needs a knee surgery. We're playing with heel hooks all the time. Yeah. And then in bodybuilding, you tear something, you know?
Very true.
Whether it was like you got a little too overzealous with the weight or whatever, or like I was just hearing a story of one of the top bodybuilders the other day. He was shoulder pressing a ridiculous amount of weight that he could do, but he had 2 spotters. One spotter was on one side, one spotter was on the other side. They weren't personal friends of his. He just grabbed 2 guys in the gym. Hey, can you spot me? And he starts to lift it, and one guy on one side of the bar thought he didn't get it, thought he wasn't going to be able to get it, so he lifted it. Now the barbell went crooked, and he like tore his rotator cuff because of that. Oh man! You know, so random stupid accidents can happen, or you could just get a little too ambitious and tear your own pec or whatever. So,
is there a right way to train for bodybuilding, or what would you say would be the best possible training habits or methods? Like, you know, obviously you want to work out and you want to be in the gym lifting and stuff like that. But is there a point to where you got to be like, hey, I got to rest. Today's my rest day, no matter what. Right.
There's deep science behind every single goal. So every time I get a new client, and I train all kinds of clients, I train just regular housewife trying to lose some weight. I train jiu-jitsu people. I train bodybuilders. I train bikini competitors. So I'll really all levels, people on day one, people that are experts. Right. But, when they come in, I'm like, what exactly is your goal? Because that determines the plan, right? So every single goal has a lot of deep science behind it.
Same thing with jiu-jitsu too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What's your goal for it?
Yeah. Well, and like, are you going to be a top player or a bottom player in jiu-jitsu? That's a lot of knowledge. Whether you're going to be the Leandro Low guard passer or are you going to be a guard player, right? Which one are you going to be? So if you tell me I want to be I want to be a strength athlete, my main goal, deadlift this much and bench press this much because I just love strength stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm training you like a power lifter. You don't train a power lifter the same way you train a bodybuilder. Yeah. I would say they're cousins metaphorically, but they're not identical twins.
Like judo and jiu-jitsu, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. They are cousins, but they're not twins. So I'm going to train a bodybuilder totally different than like a power lifter. And then there's like the day one people. I've never set foot in a gym. I'm just like a regular housewife trying to lose some weight. And I'm kind of intimidated by all the weights. I'm like, okay, like I'm going to take you real slow, baby steps, make sure you're comfortable. We're not doing anything extreme. And then I'll work you up over time to the harder things. But I kind of meet everybody where they're at, establish what is your goal. And then that tells me like the deep science behind what do we need to dive into here for your goal. Because all of them are different.
Now, I want to talk about something that may be controversial in the bodybuilding industry and just, attribute it to me not knowing enough about it. But what are the steroid testing like, or is there testing involved, or are most of these guys juicing to the gills, or what's the kind of the what's the standard in the industry?
So there's different organizations, which I think I'm unclear what the thing is, what the deal is in jiu-jitsu right now on that too, where like with jiu-jitsu, they don't test at ADCC,
right?
But they do test at other ones. I think
IBJJF does.
Well, but do they still do that? Do they still test?
I don't know. I just know a few years ago they had
They were.
7 people suspended for a while.
They were,
and then
I thought IBJJF said they weren't going to test anymore.
Yeah,
but I'm unclear on that.
I am too.
But it's that same kind of thing of like, okay, this organization will test you, this organization won't test you. So bodybuilding is the same. There's a bunch of different organizations. If you want to compete naturally, do one of these. They will be testing you. And is there ways to cheat the test? Yeah, probably. Just like there is with everything. There's smart people. But in general, 90 to 100% of the people here are not taking anything.
Oh, wow.
And even playing fields, go at it.
Yeah.
If you want to take stuff, then here is a organization where they don't care. Just like an ADCC.
Right.
They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Take whatever you want, kill each other.
Yeah. Juice to the gills.
Yeah. So really the same thing with bodybuilding and jiu-jitsu. You go to the organization that you want to, whether you want to compete naturally or you want to compete taking stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In like a professional level, like Mr. Olympia, is there stringent testing on
that? No, so that organization is the IFBB.
Okay.
Right. So there's all these different organizations. So in the IFBB, they don't test.
Okay.
But then in I can't think of. There's so many others, but I know there's 3, 4, 5 others where they do test. So that's where you pick the one that you want.
Works best for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And same thing with jiu-jitsu, right?
Yep.
You pick the ones that you want to do.
And then you know what you're accepting. If you're an ADCC, you're going in here knowing they ain't testing.
Right.
So don't cry about it. You signed up for it. So if you don't want to take things, you're going to go in there knowing this other guy is taking things.
Yeah.
I think Gordon Ryan's been outspoken about it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I do. And it's not illegal in this organization.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, you're going to go against Gordon. He's taking things.
Yeah.
You accepted that.
That's kind of what I hear, a lot of controversy around Gordon for that. And, it's kind of like, what you're getting into, right? I feel like
the way he put it was he was doing an interview or something. Somebody asked him about it. And he said steroids aren't illegal in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And like in the organizations he does, ADCC is true. They're not.
Yeah.
So he ain't breaking no rules in ADCC.
Right.
If you were to do IBJJF, where they might still test, I'm not sure, then that's a different thing. Now you are cheating because you're doing a tested thing. Yeah. And you're working your way around it. Like, okay, now we could say you actually are cheating.
Right. Right. What's your take on steroids in jiu-jitsu? Do you think that it's a good thing to do? Like, I mean, or do you think it may be just depends on what your goals are, right? If you're a high-level competitor, you're competing in organizations that aren't testing. Do you think that, the jiu-jitsu guy doing it should be on something, right, to even out the playing field?
I like the way that ADCC and Gordon and all those guys that they're upfront about, in this organization, we're doing ADCC, there is no rules, and we're being upfront about it. You know what you're getting into if you show up here. Right. Right? And then these other ones, like if IBJJF is still testing, hey, we will test you here, don't do it. So as long as it's very upfront, then the competitor can make their choice. Right. Right? And like that, it's a case-by-case, person-by-person decision, right. But we're being upfront about you can go this pathway or you can go the other pathway. Where I think it gets weird is if we're not going to be upfront about it. Right. If ADCC was acting like they were going to test, but then they don't, or like that's where it would get murky. Oh yeah. So I like how I feel like the last couple ADCCs, it was very in the news. Like, we're not testing, do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. Gordon was being upfront about it. Like, yeah, I do whatever the fuck I want. If you don't, that's your choice, but well, that's your choice. Yeah. And then, so like I like the upfrontness, because then the competitor can pick which route they want to go. Right.
Now, back in the day, or I mean, not even back in the day, but ESPN a while back did a documentary on American Gladiators, and that was a show that was really prominent in our time. And I remember Saturday mornings always, they got the. They had crazy ass names, Turbo and, whatever their names were. But, all those guys and girls were really, really big. And I remember something they talked about in the organization was that a lot of people were getting injured. And they would go into the back warm-up areas, and there were needles everywhere because everyone was juicing at that time. And some people were doing it for injury. Some people were doing it for recovery. Some people were just doing it because they were on TV to look huge, right? Is it like that at bodybuilding competitions that you've ever been a part of? Have you ever seen anything that prominent? or was that something that was more, a TV thing in the past?
Well, I mean, if you're at a show where you're allowed to do it, then it's fair game, right? And that's where you see the guy who's 300 pounds and 3% body fat,
right? Yeah.
So like, is there needles all over the floor? No.
Yeah.
No, it's like, okay,
yeah.
like cleanliness, bro.
Right.
No, but is there any delusions of like, I'm looking at a man who is 300 pounds, pure muscle, 3% body fat. Wonder if he's taking something. Right. And that one always puzzled me. Here and there, someone will ask me that. They'll look at a 300-pound. Do you think you take something? And I just look at them like, come on. Fuck, you're stupid.
Yeah.
No, but so you see the, what do I want to say? That super athlete when you go to the shows where you know that they're not testing.
Yeah.
Right. It's very visibly obvious when you go to a show, a bodybuilding show, where they do test you versus a show where they don't test you.
Yeah.
It's not a small discrepancy between the physiques. It's fucking massive. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You visibly know.
Yeah. There's things that the human body can't do naturally, right?
And there's a couple freaks out there, but I mean, no one has ever been 300 pounds with 3% body fat without taking something, right? But I can tell you a handful of people that are genetic freaks that, like, man, they have a really impressive physique and they don't take anything.
Yeah.
I mean, so in our jiu-jitsu world, Nsima, he trains at Cassio's, and he's also Mark Bell's co-host. Genetic freak. He doesn't take anything. He's an absolute genetic freak, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he's a good example of genetics, and that's kind of a whole other conversation. But with that, like, I feel like something people don't understand, we're all born with a different genetic ceiling.
Right.
So someone looks at Nsima and, oh, wow, that's an inspiration. I could do that. And like, no, you probably can't.
Yeah, you have to be born with those genetics.
Yes, you're born with those genetics, and that's not saying Nsima hasn't worked his ass off to get the physique that he has.
Right.
But your genetic ceiling is probably lower than his.
Yeah. Well, and even Gordon and Nikki Ryan, right? Obviously, there's good genetics going on there too.
Yes.
It's not only, I know Gordon's been up front with some of the things he's taken, but a lot of things contribute to his good genetics. Like you look at old pictures of him, he wasn't as big, but genetics do play a role, and
a massive role.
You can even tell by looking at his brother, who's not as big as Gordon, but still has the same good genetics, and he's in great shape. He's big, he's got great muscle and different things like that. So you're 100% on that. Genetics are huge.
Genetics are a massive part of the equation, with or without drugs in play.
Right.
Yeah, massive part of the equation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I want to talk back. You talked about your black belt debut on Fight to Win. Now, break down that whole experience and how it was being on that big stage, competing, and then eventually pulling off that submission. And you said there was a little bit of a story behind it. So let's just talk about some of the fun things with that black belt debut that you experienced.
Yeah, just that was. I'm kind of done competing because like that night couldn't have gone more perfect, and I kind of wanted to close my jiu-jitsu competing chapter with that night because it went so perfect, right? So just shout out to Seth, who runs Fight to Win, and shout out to I believe his name is Sean. That's the guy I went against. He's the head ref of Fight to Win.
Okay.
Both of them really awesome people. Both of them I have a lot of respect for. Really cool people. But so like with Seth, I've done 2 Fight to Wins. One was at brown, one was at black.
Okay.
And so Seth talked about this in interviews. When I did the brown belt Fight to Win in Sacramento, I was the first handicap athlete to ever do Fight to Win. Oh, wow. So just that, he actually told me that the morning of, and that was like almost brought a tear to my eye. Like, holy shit, I'm the first handicapped athlete ever to do Fight to Win, to be on that stage. Holy shit. So that like hit me. Win or lose, like that meant something to me, right? When I was a brown belt.
Right.
So went on to lose that match, and I lost by decision, but it was a decent match.
Yeah.
But anyways, so then fast forward to the black belt match. I knew when I did the brown belt match, Seth gave a number. He said that he asked like 10 people to fight me or something like that, and 10 people turned me down.
Wow.
And then he found like the 11th guy finally said yes. Right. So he hit me up when I was a black belt, and hey, I'm coming to town, for Fight to Win. Do you want to be on this card? I'm like, yeah, but can you find an opponent?
Yeah.
Last time you had to ask 11 people.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'll work on it, whatever. So then the head ref, Sean, he says, hey, I'll fight him, and we're relatively around the same size.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh shit, you found me a fight quick. Let's do it. Right. So whatever, we go out, we do the fight, had a good time. I got him in, again, it was kind of a wrestling move that I always used to do when I was in high school wrestling. It was called a Peterson, and which is crucifix to a jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah.
But if I'm in the crucifix position, using jiu-jitsu terms, if I'm in that position in a wrestling match, I'm winning because you're on your back.
Right. You're
Right?
pinned.
You're
right?
pinned or
Yeah.
close to pinned,
Yeah.
right? So I'm in a fantastic position. So I've always looked at crucifix like that. And since pretty much white belt days, I'll let people get crucifix on me and then I'll turn it around on them.
Yeah.
And I know just basic defenses of like keep your chin down. There's an obvious choke there.
Yeah.
There's a couple obvious arm attacks they can do with their legs. So put your arms in the right spot so they can't do that. To me, I just kind of like common sense, look out for the basic attacks you would do from crucifix.
Right.
It's not that hard really when you dive into it
Yeah.
to stop those things. So anyways, we got into that crucifix position in the black belt fight, and then I turned it into this weird extended arm bar over my legs, right? So won the fight. I remember like back flipping out of it, kind of rolling over my head out of it, getting back to my knees, and just all these things went through my head all at once. I remember thinking, oh shit, I just won on the fight to win stage.
Right.
Because I lost my brown belt fight.
Right.
I'm like, wow, like that, I'm really proud I can put this just on my mental mantle in my head of like accomplishments. Like I've won a fight on the fight to win stage at black belt in front of my hometown crowd.
That's huge.
So that processed through my brain in a second. And then I thought, okay, I was just in a bad position when it comes to like jiu-jitsu eyes. All the people in the room that do jiu-jitsu, they're looking at it like I was losing just now. They probably think I just tapped.
Yeah.
Right? So I thought...
It was confusing if you watch it back live. Yeah.
So I thought I better raise my hand to let the crowd know I won because they probably think I just lost, right? So I raised my hand to signify, hey, I'm the one who won.
Yeah.
I got the tap. And then that scream, I still remember that to this day. Everyone in that room just screamed. And I'm like, holy shit, that was loud.
Yeah.
You know, like the crowd erupted.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. You know, went back to the center, got my hand raised. Seth got on the microphone. And again, it was a weird arm bar that I did, right? Very untraditional.
Unconventional. Yeah.
So Seth gets on the microphone and he says, winner by, I don't know what the fuck that was. Tyler Brey. So that just added to the moment, his comedy, whatever. So anyways, then I get backstage. I'm processing like, okay, cool. Like I won, so I'm in a good mood. Seth immediately comes back to me when I get backstage and he says, that was so fucking cool. And we got to do a video explaining how you did that. And like, that was fucking awesome. And I'm like, okay, like everything's happening so fast, but like, okay, whatever. I'll do a little tutorial, 2 minute, right?
Yeah.
And then Seth goes, hey, Sean, get over here. I'm like, wait, what? You're going to make me do it on Sean?
Yeah.
Seth, that's fucked up. So I'm like, I just submitted him in front of everybody. And you're going to make me do it on him for the video that you're going to put on Flow? I'm like, Seth, that's kind of fucked up. Like, I don't feel morally right with that.
Yeah.
No, but so Sean ran over with a big smile on his face, plopped on the floor and gave me his arm. He's like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, you're really cool. I wouldn't have been that cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Here's
I'm
the-
a sore loser, man.
I'm like...
Yeah, don't talk to me, motherfucker. I lost. Fuck you.
Exactly. No, so right away, I'm like, dude, Sean is really cool. But so whatever, we do the video, a little explanation on like how I did it. And then I was shooting the shit with Sean for the next like 20, 30 minutes. And he went and got his kids and brought him back there to meet me. And
That's awesome.
Like, again, like if he listens to this, just, I don't know, shout out to Sean. Like in my head, I almost felt like called out by Sean. Like, I need to get on your level, Sean, of no ego.
Yeah.
Like, man, like it was admirable how little ego he had. You know, I'm like, man, I feel like, I don't know, I felt like I felt inspired by him that he had such little ego that he'd be willing to make this video literally 3 minutes after I tapped him with this fucking move. I'm like, man, you are so cool.
That's pretty
You're
awesome.
a good man. You're a good human being. You know, so I don't know. I just thought that was so cool, you know. But yeah, so just the whole night couldn't have gone more perfect. I ended up getting I think I got fight of the night and submission of the night.
Wow.
Or one of those. Maybe both of them. I don't know.
Now,
But
doesn't Fight to Win pay their competitors for some of those matches?
I don't even. I think you. I don't totally remember.
Yeah.
I think you get a percentage of the ticket sales or something that because everyone who shows up, they're saying they're showing up to see you.
Right.
I think you get a percentage of everybody who buys a ticket and puts your name on it, basically. You know, like under your name or whatever.
That's pretty cool.
So something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really awesome to see, man. And you know, obviously, Fight to Win, they've grown over. I mean, I forget how many shows they're at now. Probably over 200 shows. I'm
sure,
guessing.
yeah.
And you know, it's it's kind of our big stage, our local big stage. It's on Flow Grappling, right?
Yep.
And they come around here in Sacramento and San Francisco and all these places quite a bit. And, you know, like for a grappler, you know, that might not get to ADCC or, you know, the highest level of the highest level, you know, Fight to Win is a huge organization to us. And, and you know, to see you have success on that stage and man, it was awesome to see. Like, I love it. You know, I've seen other things like, didn't Jiu-Jitsu Magazine or one of those magazines do a write-up on you not that long ago? Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, cool story with that, too. There's so many stories, but cool story with that. That was when I was sponsored by 3150.
Okay.
If you remember that gi company. Yeah. Right, really cool.
Are they still around?
No, I don't think so, but Derek was running that. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was sponsored by them for a bit, and then through them, they were doing a thing with their gis, right? And I was representing their gis, so they're going to put that in Jiu-Jitsu Magazine. They had me and a bunch of their other people do a photo shoot, right, for that. So they put me in Jiu-Jitsu Magazine wearing their new gi, and it said, "What's your excuse?"
Yeah.
And so just that was cool. And then like the one page over was a picture of like Henzo and Sakuraba or something. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm in a magazine with legends. This is fucking cool, right? So just
doesn't get better than that, right?
Yeah, it's just cool to see my face next to their face in a magazine, right?
Yeah.
But so just crazy story that came with that. A number of years later, I don't remember, like a handful of years later, I was at Casio's one day. And we do a regular day, right? And then at the end of class, I'm getting ready to head out the door, and some guy comes running up to me who was in the class, but it wasn't anybody I knew, right? And he says, "Hey, you're Tyler, right? Yeah, you're Tyler Brey, whatever." And then "Hey, how you doing? I wanted to tell you something. A couple of years ago, I saw your magazine, the Jiu-Jitsu Magazine article with, you know, your face in it and everything. You're in the wheelchair, and it says, what's your excuse?" And like I almost get a little emotional talking about it. He said, during that time a couple of years ago, I saw your article in Jiu-Jitsu Magazine, and I was going through testicular cancer at the time. Man. And then that like helped me fight through.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Like, holy shit.
I got chills when you said that.
No, and then like it blindsided me because I just had a normal day of jiu-jitsu and I was about to leave, and he's like, "Hey, real quick, I want to talk to you."
Yeah.
And he hits me with this that I overcame testicular cancer, and now I'm back on the mat, and just seeing your article kind of gave me some oomph to fight through that cancer during that time. And I just remember driving home in silence in my car, like, holy shit.
That's a lot to take in,
Holy
man.
shit, dude. That's some intense stuff you just said to me.
Yeah.
I just drove home in silence, just processing and appreciating that, you know?
Yeah.
And just that's really cool. So, I mean, thank you, Derek and 3150, for giving me that opportunity to be in Jiu-Jitsu Magazine.
Right.
And, you know?
Yeah, and it's very admirable to see, dude. Like, I mean, you hear it all the time. You've been around jiu-jitsu long enough. There's all kinds of excuses why people don't show up. There's all kinds of excuses on why they can't train. Oh, I got to get in shape first. Oh, you know, I got to figure out my work schedule, this and that, whatever it is. But, like, dude, you've never made excuses for anything. Like, even your bodybuilding and jiu-jitsu and wrestling, like, to see someone like you and you know, the uphill battle that you've had to climb since birth, you know, like, to not make excuses, to not, you know, put anything in the way. Like, dude, you're really an inspiration to most people in jiu-jitsu, you know, and it's awesome to even call you a friend, to be around you, you know, like I've never heard you once ever say like, I can't do something. So, you know, shout out to you and your mindset, dude. Like, you have a really strong mind, and like I said, you're an inspiration to at least me, and I know a lot of people that are going to be listening to this to actually hear your story. And you know, like you don't make excuses, you know. That's what it boils down to. Like, what's your excuse out there, right? You could come up with anything in the world, but there's also a bucket that has solutions. And I feel like you're always reaching in that bucket with solutions.
And it's always having like a figure it out mentality, you know? 'Cause, I mean, think about with jiu-jitsu, look at the crazy guards that we're doing today that we weren't doing 20 years ago.
Right.
We got the worm guard, all this like craziness. How'd that happen? Someone just played around and figured it out, right? So that's all I'm doing, but I'm doing it with daily activities. Like, okay, I'm a handicapped man. How do I get the thing off the top shelf? Yeah. I'm just going to experiment, and like I have a figure it out mentality the same way that all the jiu-jitsu guys do when they're coming up with these goofy guards, and they're just in the lab doing experiments, figuring it out, right? But it's really that same thing. And when I run into a lot of people who they just always have excuses, I can't do that, I can't do that. When I ask them a little more questions, I realize you didn't even try to figure it out. Yeah. You didn't even do a couple of experiments to see how can I do this despite my, obstacle?
Right.
Right.
Whatever it is.
You just went straight to, I can't do it. With everything I do, I'm at least going to attempt. I'm going to go over and think about it, think of the concepts here. How can I modify? But I have a figure it out mentality, and that's what I feel a lot of people are missing.
Yeah. And I'm sure like with that, it hasn't been easy, right? There's times where you may experience failure in certain things, right? But you got to keep working at it. And that's probably one of the things I hate the most. I've showed moves, and I hear guys, oh, I don't have the legs for it. I can't do it, and I'm like, you motherfucker, like, shut the fuck up, you know, and it pisses me off, right? Or yeah, no, just doesn't work for me. I can't do it. And I'm like,
you barely tried.
Yeah, you've tried for 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've done 10 drills on one side, right?
Exactly.
It takes years to develop things, right? And my buddy Greg, like I said, he's had to overcome a lot with being born with one hand.
Yeah.
And I've never heard him ever say, I can't do that, right? He still tries it. There's chokes and it's crazy because you really start to learn that, your limitations are only what you set them at. He's become a great gi guard player, with having one hand. He can wrap up that gi and I mean, he's cut off circulation to my wrist and fucked me up from it for quite some time because he doesn't let things stop him. And, that's, like I said, you set your own limitations in life and in jiu-jitsu and in bodybuilding and in everything you do, right? Solutions or excuses, that's what it boils down to. And so we like to have fun on the show, right? We like to be formal a little bit, talk to our guests, have some good conversation, hear their story, but we also like to have a little fun. We have a little game we play called Overrated or Underappreciated, where we'll throw out some grapplers, some MMA guys, and you just kind of weigh in your opinion. Do you think they're overrated or do you think they're underappreciated? You want to play?
Let's go for it.
All right. So one of my favorite people I've been asking lately, he just signed a deal with UFC and their new grappling organization, but he's been in one organization for quite some time, Mikey Musumeci. Overrated or underappreciated?
I'm still going to say underappreciated because he's still in his prime. He's still going to go on to do even greater things than he already has.
Yeah.
Yeah, we totally haven't seen the best of him. He's too young. I don't know of any major injuries he has or crazy stomach issue like Gordon or something. So
now there was that weird thing. He was supposed to go up against Cade Rotolo. Cade pulled out for some unknown injury. Then he said he had a tear in his lungs from doing the Hicks and Gracie breathing techniques.
I remember that, yeah.
Now, he also tried, from my understanding, to cut like 35 pounds to go into that. Do you think that's a good approach for him to be losing that kind of weight
Never
in jiu-jitsu?
anybody.
Yeah.
No person, I don't care what your sport is, like the smart way is always slow.
Yeah.
So, you got to cut 30 pounds for your tournament. And then like the typical wrestler jiu-jitsu guy, he tried to cut 30 pounds in 3 weeks or whatever. And I got out on the mat and I felt like shit.
Yeah.
Like, no shit.
Yeah.
Right? You shouldn't have lost 30 pounds in 3 weeks. You're always going to feel like shit when you get on the mat after that.
Right.
Lose the weight slowly or don't get so fat in between tournaments.
Yeah.
No, that's always the right way is to do it slow.
Yeah.
Right? That's always going to give you way more strength and energy. You're not going to lose muscle on the way down if you do it slow. That's what we do in bodybuilding. I'm slowly getting shredded for the show, but I'm starting at least 3 months, if not farther out. I've started 3, 4, 5 months out before with the fat loss process because I'm trying not to lose muscle as I lose fat.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't believe in jiu-jitsu. Like, you should be losing that kind of weight. MMA is a different story. There's punches involved. And even then, I don't think that kind of weight is healthy to lose, 24 hours before you're about to get into a MMA fight, It can be bad for the body. It can be bad for the brain, right? A lot of people say the knockouts come when there's a huge weight cut. You look at Alex Pereira, and he got knocked out by Izzy, but he also cut a shitload of weight to get down there.
Yep.
So very interesting. So now my other interesting one is, okay, we got two twin brothers, Cade and Ty Rotolo, right? They're both phenomenal athletes. Okay, Ty's been having a little bit less success than Cade, it seems like. Cade won the $1 million tournament. He's won ADCC. Ty had a little bit rougher of a run. It seems like there might be some injuries here and there for him. Ty Rottola, what's your take on him? Overrated or underappreciated?
I mean, you're at the highest level, man.
Yeah.
You're at the highest level. Shit happens, and anybody can win on any given day. So, and I mix them up. Who won?
So,
CJI?
CJI was won by Cade Rottola.
Yeah,
the one
that's
with
Cade.
the fro.
Okay.
Yeah.
But okay, he won that day. If they rematch, that doesn't mean he's gonna win.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard for me to say one is way better than the other. I mean, yeah, I don't know what injuries that they have. I mean,
I think some sort of knee injury is what took him out of CJI. Like he was struggling during that match with oh man, I'm blank. But the two brothers, the Tackett brothers. Sorry, Andrew Tackett, I believe.
Yeah, and that's the thing is they're. I mean, so Cade won, but he didn't walk through the tournament. You know, he got pushed by people, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you're at the highest level, shit happens. You're not just outrageously dominant, right? Maybe Gordon is pretty outrageously dominant, but that's it. You know, most of the other guys, they're not outrageously dominant. Therefore, it's any given day, either one of them could win or lose. And then just Ty is going through a rough time right now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean long term. Maybe he'll end up winning more once he gets the injuries.
Right. They're still so young.
They're still so young. Yeah. And are they going to go to an MMA route? Or are they going to stay more with jiu-jitsu?
Sounds like both of them are going to focus a little bit more on MMA.
Okay.
Maybe not so much Ty, but I know Cade just had an MMA match with one. He dominated the striking, knocked the dude down, went out and submitted him pretty quickly. So I know his biggest focus is MMA right now for Cade.
Yeah. And then MMA is a different animal. 'Cause I can think of so many people that off the top of my head, Brock Lesnar and John Jones, good wrestlers, not great.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me what Olympics did either of them go to?
Neither.
Yeah. Neither one of them were making Olympic teams, right? Brock Lesnar was an NCAA champion one time.
Yeah.
That means he lost the 3 other years in college.
Yeah.
Neither one of them were outrageously good wrestlers, but they went to MMA and they did outrageously good.
Well, and even John Jones beat an Olympic champion in Daniel Cormier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so MMA is significantly different. So they're very good at their niche, whether it was wrestling or jiu-jitsu, but when they go to MMA, they might be incredibly good at that, right?
Yeah.
So it's, this doesn't always equal that, you know?
Right. So in this ADCC with CJI going on, we got to see a lot of standout performances from older guys. One of the biggest ones was Wagner Rocha.
Yep.
Overrated or underappreciated?
So with him, how do I put this into words? For me, I'm going to say underappreciated. Let's see, how do I put this into words? For a long time, I kind of viewed him as the bad guy in jiu-jitsu in my head.
Yeah.
Because to me, he's the OG of the smother.
Right.
I don't know if most of the jiu-jitsu world views him that way, but when I first started seeing smothers, he was doing it.
Yeah.
And then at first you're like, is that a dirty move? Is that, I don't know, it caused debate in the jiu-jitsu world.
Right.
Is that a dickhead move? Right? And now everybody does it.
Yeah.
But so he was the first to do a smother. And then, I'm a Sacramento boy. He went against Dustin Akabari back in the day. He was one of my friends. He beat Dustin. So that also biases me to not like him a little bit. He does those smother chokes. He's a cheater. And he beat Dustin. And, so there was this kind of little bit of me not liking him in a way.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with him at ADCC as a fan, right?
Yeah.
He kept winning, and he looked like he was having fun every second he was on the mat.
That's something I saw too. He
wouldn't
looked like
stop
he was having a
smiling.
great time, right?
He was smiling every second.
Yeah.
And just so you had fun with him.
Yeah.
And then you could see he was just appreciative every time he won. He would just take a minute and you could just see.
Soak it in, right?
He's soaking in and just appreciating. I won at the highest level. I'm going on to the next round of the tournament. And so he was fun to follow.
It's got to be pretty surreal, though, having your kids compete too, right alongside of you.
Yep.
Achilles and I think his daughter's name Jasmine or something
Yep.
like that, right? So having your kids compete at those high levels with you, I mean, you've been doing the damn thing for how long, right?
Yep.
And now your kids are doing it with you. It's got to be pretty surreal. So I understand. He looked great, going into that, and like I said, he had a good time. The other older gentleman that was in there was Cyborg. Overrated or
And
and
Lovato.
Yeah.
Yep.
So overrated or underappreciated?
I've always loved him.
Yeah. He's a tough motherfucker, right?
He's a tough motherfucker, and he's but he's charismatic. He's funny. He's got a lot of personality. I went to way back in, I believe, 2011 or something like that. I went to the Jiu-Jitsu Expo.
Okay.
Do you remember that? I
man,
think they did it 2 or 3 years and then they shut it down.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad I went to this though. This
Yeah.
was back in 2011. I went and they did a super seminar and it was everyone. It was Cyborg, Comprado, Galvao, I think the Mendez brothers were there, and you just stayed on the mat, and it was one seminar after another, after another, after another. Yeah,
that's
you're
awesome.
Like this is holy crap. This is jiu-jitsu heaven,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, anyways, Drydesdale was there. Hodger Gracie was supposed to be
Holy
one of
shit.
them. No, yeah,
Yeah.
this was a unbelievable like slew of seminars all in one day.
Yeah.
So I just sat on the mat, and I'm like, holy shit, right? But so anyways, I just particularly remember the energy Cyborg brought.
Yeah.
Also Jacare was in that lineup. It's all
Jacare's
coming back to me.
awesome.
But anyways, but particularly Jacare and Cyborg were like the coolest.
Yeah.
Cyborg just brought so much energy of like, I'm so excited to teach you guys jiu-jitsu today. What do you guys want to learn? I just want to stay here all day and teach you guys jiu-jitsu. He just brought this happiness.
Yeah.
And he taught us tornado guard, which was really fun.
That's pretty badass.
But yeah, I don't know. I had this impression of him ever since that he's just such a charismatic, fun-loving, bring positive energy kind of a guy.
Yeah.
So I loved watching him at ADCC, you know, and seeing how successful he was.
Yeah.
And
He did great, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, competing with these younger guys, dude, like,
Yep.
I mean, kind of Darte and, you
Yep.
know, like that's huge, man. These young guys are no joke that are out there, man. And, another ADCC major upset was Miragali got tapped by Michael Pixley.
Yep.
Now, Michael Pixley took that UFC Fight Pass Invitational match against Nicky Rod, and it didn't go his way. But overrated or underappreciated for Michael Pixley, being a purple belt in the damn thing.
So some of those guys I'm not as familiar with. So I went into it knowing who Pixley was, but I wasn't highly educated on like, who is he? Who is he beaten? What's his favorite moves?
Right.
I was kind of like, I was asking my friends who I was sitting with, like, okay, update me on Pixley.
Yeah.
I know the name.
Wrestler, mainly a wrestler.
Yeah, like, you know, so he was one of the guys I wasn't as familiar with versus Wagner and Cyborg and Lovato. I'm like, okay, those are the guys who were the beasts when I was coming up, right? But no, I remember that moment when he threw.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he threw him and,
across the ring.
yeah, and then Marigoli posted, and they showed the replay a bunch of times, and it was hard to see what happened.
Yeah.
But it was a weird, abrupt post.
Yeah.
Like, was it an elbow? Was it a shoulder? So it was weird, but it was such a quick tap. He did
Yeah.
immediately tap. So you're like, okay, that was injury. That wasn't,
Yeah.
you know, he would have fought more if it was just the choke.
And you could kind of see the look on his face too when the way he tapped, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, there was a pain to it.
Yeah.
But anyways, on Pixley, I love that he's a darcer because I'm a darcer.
Yeah.
So I love the Rotolos, and then I love Pixley because they're always darcing, and I'm like, I've been working on those darces from different angles for years. So I'm glad the world is like, you should respect that choke more.
Right.
You know?
Right.
They're bringing it back. You know?
No, the darts is very effective. So the other one from that weekend, right? A huge favorite going into CJI was Victor Hugo. He got tapped really quick. I had a buddy on here talking a while back saying, "Oh, I think Victor Hugo is the one that's going to dethrone Gordon Ryan." And you know, he was on a pretty good upward run, but had a little rough run at CJI. What's your take on Victor Hugo? Overrated?
Who did he lose to?
Oh man, I'd have to look his name.
He's one of the guys that I know the name, but I'm not as educated on his background.
Yeah,
I know
Victor
the name.
Hugo's Six Blades Jiu-Jitsu out of Texas. Really high-level grappler. He's won a bunch of Who's Number One fights recently, but he had a little rough run at CJI. I mean, I think the guy who tapped him, was a little bit smaller than him, for my opinion. And then he didn't go very far in it too. I think Nicky Rod took him out, but yeah, just curious if you had to take.
Yeah, with him, I don't know him well enough to really give a I know the name. I know he's a badass, but I haven't like studied him. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's gonna be fun then. Do you follow much MMA a little bit?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So I'm a Gracie nerd when it comes to it. I love reading the history about the Gracie family. I love watching. I got hooked back in the day on Choke.
Yeah. Shout out to Rose Gracie. She's awesome.
Yeah. I got hooked on choke back in the day, and I just saw Rickson in a whole nother light. And his son Crone is competing in MMA. He has a UFC fight, I believe, tonight.
Yeah,
it might be tonight. Yeah, it's coming up very soon if it's not tonight. Now, he's had a little rough run with the MMA. I recently read an article saying that he's taken a lot of influence from people saying, hey, you got to do this or you got to do that. Crone Gracie, when it comes to a jiu-jitsu standpoint, overrated or underappreciated as a Gracie?
I was talking to someone recently about him. No, but I feel he can be proud of himself no matter what happens in MMA because he won ADCC.
Right.
So you lived up to the pressure that was probably on him, like looking at who your dad was. Yeah. Right. So just that day that he won ADCC, you can hang your hat on that. And just whatever happens with MMA happens. Like I hope he feels like he closed that chapter, took the pressure off himself, however you want to say it. I hope he gets a lot of joy in that. No, so I would say he's, if anything, underappreciated. Yeah. If anything, just he doesn't have to prove anything more. He achieved the ultimate in pure jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, it's got
to be tough living as Rickson Gracie's son. Right? Yeah, the best to ever do it in a lot of people's opinions. Right. Exactly. It's arguable, but. Yeah. I've always admired Rickson, and like I said, I grew up on Choke, the Gracie in action videos. Somebody gave me a bunch of Gracie books. Like, this is when I very first started in 2005. There wasn't DVDs and stuff like that weren't as popular, and the internet wasn't what it was. But Crone Gracie, man, I feel like that's a tough burden to carry, being the son of Rickson. You know?
Just what's that like, Yeah.
Everyone expects you to go undefeated, right? And in MMA nowadays, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's the 1% of the 1%. Yeah, right. So I've met Crone once briefly. I remember I got a picture with him.
That's awesome.
Rose Gracie's really cool. I've done a number of her tournaments.
And that's house sister, right?
I don't know where she is on the Gracie tree. Yeah. Yeah, but she's really cool. But I met her when I was a blue belt, and then she, I don't know, she just helped me out a lot over the years, and I did her tournament many times, and that was always a cool experience doing her Gracie Nationals, Gracie Worlds. Yeah. So she's a really cool person.
That's pretty awesome, man. Well, Tyler, that's we're gonna call it on that. I just want to give you a few minutes to shout out whoever you'd like to, man. It's been a pleasure having you on the show and having you in studio with me, man. And dude, like you're one of the most awesome people out there in this community. You're very kind. You drove all the way out here from Sacramento, Roseville area to come do the show, man, and it really means a lot to me. I just want to give you a couple minutes to take the floor and shout out whoever you'd like.
Oh man, I feel like I could say thank you to a million people, because like my jiu-jitsu is the culmination of learning something from everyone. I've done so many like private lessons and stuff, and then all of them taught me, that one thing that I added to my game. So often when I'm teaching a class, I'll teach, say, 3 different techniques in a day, but I learned that from 3 different people, but I put it into one lesson for my students today. Yeah. So I just look back and say, wow, I learned so much from all these different people. But I guess really more than anyone, my biggest influences was my high school wrestling coach, Bruce Pearson, Grant Depew, and then also Cassio Wernick, and that's forever my proudest accomplishment. That, I'm proud of my bodybuilding. I'm proud of like all these different things I've been able to do, like despite the disability. But being able to say that I'm a black belt under Cassio Wernick is always my proudest accomplishment. And not just that I'm a black belt, but particularly under him, because I just have so much respect for him as a person, Yeah. So just being able to say that I'm a Cassio black belt is always going to be my proudest achievement. Yeah.
And if anyone's looking to train with Tyler, he's over at Aries BJJ Roseville. How do we find you on Instagram or Facebook?
Yep. So hit me up on Instagram, Black Belt Bodybuilding, and you can hit me up for personal training. I train at a gym in Roseville, or I also offer online training. So hit me up for any of your personal training needs and nutrition and all that stuff. And then come roll with me at Aries Jiu-Jitsu in Roseville or at Cassio's.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tyler's an awesome human being. Get to know him, get to talk to him. Are you doing seminars as well?
That's upon request. Yeah, I'm always open for seminars and private lessons. Hit me up anytime for that. Yeah.
Awesome. So make sure you go check him out. Go support him. anyways, everyone, thank you for listening to the podcast, for downloading. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere where you listen to podcasts. We are out there. Make sure you download Grapplers Talk. Give us a like, give us a review. That would be awesome and appreciated. But other than that, thank you, Tyler, for being on. This is Dave, and we are out.
This is Grapplers Talk.